Hello and welcome to another off-week bonus episode of Read Brave, a comics podcast. I'm Vinton Bayne, and this week we're going to show you another installment of Crisis on Infinite Podcasts. In this episode, Sarah Cade from the Common Room Radio Network and Alastair Stephens from Storywonk, along with Vinton Bayne, that's me, got together to discuss Batman vs. Superman, or as we like to call him, Snyderman, and Brian Azzerello's comic book run on Wonder Woman. Until next week, when we come back with another full episode, remember to check out readbrave.com. Hello and welcome to Crisis on Infinite Podcasts. I'm Vinton Bayne.
I'm Sarah Cade.
And I'm Alastair Stephens.
And today, I was going to say this week, but this definitely doesn't come out weekly, and I'm not even sure if it's going to come out monthly. But this time around, we are going to be talking Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, and the New 52 run of Wonder Woman done by Azzerello.
Yes.
So
lot much to talk about.
Yeah, lots of DC love today, which those of you out there who maybe have listened to some of the other Common Room radio shows know that I'm mostly a Marvel fangirl, so this is a little outside of my wheelhouse, but I'm very excited. I think have a lot of very good things to say. So,
yeah, I fortunately have a little bit to say about DC, even though I'm a huge Marvel fanboy, just because I've been around comics long enough.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we're all more on the Marvel side of the divide, right?
That's what I think. Yeah, that sounds accurate. Yes. So you just saw Batman vs. Superman. Is that right, Alastair?
I did, and let me tell you, that theater was not full. I could have picked any seat that I wanted. It was surprisingly empty. Here's the thing about Batman vs. Superman. I think it's about 60% of a great film.
Yeah.
I think there were great performances. Mm-hmm. Some of the writing is really good. Mm-hmm. I think that there are set pieces that work for me more convincingly than some of the set pieces in Man of Steel, Zack Snyder's previous swing at a DC movie. The problem is Superman. I don't want to get straight into the negative here. Maybe I'll give you guys a chance to talk a little about the positive and frame this first.
And maybe we'll talk about Man of Steel first, because that one's been out longer, and I think that people have, you know, who are fans have had more cushion put around their hearts to protect themselves.
We're more okay with hating on Man of Steel right now,
I think so. Although actually, okay, so I was hating on Man of Steel for a long time. In fact, whenever I told my fiance Nathan that I didn't particularly like Man of Steel, he straight up banned me from going to see Batman vs. Superman, which in hindsight, I wish that he had kept that promise. That would have been nice. I wouldn't have really missed much. But I had seen it, I think I just saw it when it came out in theaters like forever ago. And my favorite part about Man of Steel was Amy Adams. But we watched it again we saw it Saturday before we went to go see Batman vs. Superman, right? So that was earlier.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You weren't there. I just assumed that you're always there when my other friends are there. But
in spirit.
It's true. Yeah. Well, Robbie was there. Nathan was there. You weren't.
Pretty much me.
Yeah, pretty much you. Yeah.
Combined the two.
So we rewatched it, and it was the first time that I had seen it in a number of years, and I actually really enjoyed all of the individual performances in the film. I thought that everybody did a really good job. I thought that Henry Cavill was really good. Of course, I still had a giant crush on Amy Adams the entire time, and thought that some of the character moments were really, really great. Like the moment whenever Clark goes and talks to his mom after Zod has gotten on the TVs and is like, oh, you know, give up Superman or we destroy the planet, blah, blah. And Diane Lane is a queen and is just like, you don't owe this world anything. You've never owed this world anything, da-da-da-da-da. And all of the moments I really, really enjoyed. The movie as a whole fell flat for me, and I just didn't enjoy the whole experience. What about you guys?
That's exactly how I felt. When I went and saw it in the theaters, I think I left kind of excited. I was like, yeah, that was a fun movie. But I think the first time I see anything, I don't analyze it. I just enjoy it. And then the next time I see it, I go, oh, this has so many flaws. What is happening here? And I think I walked away with some of those flaws to begin with, but I always sugarcoat things for myself the first time.
That's really funny.
That's a good approach. I like that. I think the first act of Man of Steel is one of my favorite depictions of Superman in modern media. I think that first act when he is homeless and rootless and doesn't have that connection long before he puts on the suit, long before he has this identity crisis, that stuff really works for me. And Amy Adams' Lois Lane pursuing him is one of my favorite things. Ultimately, the problem is Superman.
Yeah.
These movies put a stress on this character that I think the character itself can't support. Superman is not this Messiah figure. He's not the alien.
Right.
That's not what makes him interesting. What makes him interesting is the Clark Kent side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that after I just finished rereading Crisis on Infinite Earths, the comic book series from which we take our name.
Yes.
And the reboot that followed Crisis really moved Superman away from the big blue Boy Scout and made Clark Kent the real figure and Superman the identity. Which I think is the right choice. He's a farm boy. He's the best of us. Not because he's superpowered and from space, but because he's the most human.
Yeah.
And these movies, for me, miss the point fundamentally there. Specifically, the Christ imagery in Man of Steel is so heavy-handed.
It's
And
very
it just
heavy.
gets
It
even
really
more
is.
heavy-handed by
Yeah.
the time we get into Batman versus Superman. That stuff just doesn't work for me. You know, I've never been interested in Superman as a Messiah figure. I've never been interested in Superman as a god. I like him as the farm boy. I like him as Clark Kent. I'm reminded of, I don't know, you guys are both like much embarrassingly younger than me. But I'm
That
reminded
much younger.
10 years makes all the difference, let me tell you.
Well,
I'm reminded of the 90s TV series, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of
Oh,
Superman.
yeah.
I
used to
know
watch
The
about
it.
Jim
that.
Kane, Terry Hatcher series.
Yep.
That was such a pivotal kind of introduction for me to the character of Superman who I'd never liked before. Making Clark Kent the real character and making Superman the identity, making Superman the costume is so interesting. We do some of that with Bruce Wayne in Batman versus Superman. I think we'll talk about that in due
Right.
course. I think Affleck is fantastic.
he does a
This
really
is-
good
I
job.
agree.
Really close to my definitive Batman now.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, I think he's just astonishing. He brings this weariness and edge and frustration and humanity
Yes,
to that role.
I'm glad you said weariness, and whenever we get
Yeah.
to that, we'll talk about that, because that is what I actually saw the movie twice, because my younger brother had not seen it yet, and we were palling around on a Monday, and I was like, well, if you want to go see it, the matinee is going, it's like a Monday, we can just go watch it. And I got to tell you that on the second time viewing, it makes not way more sense, but slightly more sense. Hang on one second. Okay, I will be right back.
All right. So, Vinton, did you read a lot of DC growing up?
No, not really. I mean, I picked up the peripheral Superman comic here and there. I've always described myself as a Marvel fan who is in love with Batman.
Yes.
So
Batman is the most Marvel of the DC characters. That's why he works.
for sure. So I have probably out of the thousands of single issue comics I own, I probably have a dozen of those from when I was growing up that were DC, and that was about it. I was way more X-Men than Spider-Man. That was my jam.
That's how I grew up too. It was all X-Men. It was all Spider-Man. A little Fantastic Four, some Thor thrown in there. But
Yeah.
it's interesting that as I get older, I'm looking at the DC stuff, particularly the DC stuff, the big events, the crises, looking at those and seeing this like really interesting approach to continuity into world building.
Yeah.
There's so much there that's fun.
Yeah, I recently listened to a podcast with a guy trying to, in maybe 10 to 15 minutes, talk about all the canon changes and the continuity craziness of DC. And I don't think I had ever realized it on a grand scale. I knew like the individual stories, but on the grand scale, I didn't realize how many times they had reset the universe and what that implied, and then what happened when there was like two Superman that they didn't have to collide into one, and this character's never even been mentioned again, and it was kind of insane. I was like, oh, this is way worse than the Marvel continuity I've been struggling with my whole life.
Marvel does this sliding scale where things are mutable, and maybe this happened and maybe it didn't, and maybe this was a what if story, and there were, we had, I suppose the closest thing we got was the Ultimate Universe. We had that entire reboot. And now we've come through Secret War and we've had that same integration. It's surprising going back to reread Crisis on Infinite Earths, how much it feels like the new Marvel, amalgamated multiverse.
Oh, yeah.
Owes to what DC did in 85, 86?
Yeah, it's somewhere around there, mid-'80s for sure.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see that multiverse collapse down into one string of stories. And there's that interesting idea that the myths somehow consume each other, that there's a value in the retelling of Batman's origin story or of Superman's arrival on Earth. It's fascinating stuff.
There's a local comic book store owner here who I'm friends with, and I don't know who told him this, but he was out drinking with a buddy, and one of his favorite things that he's ever heard about comics was this guy said, the thing about comics is it's the same story over and over again, just over and over. It's just the same story. And he goes, thank God it's a good damn story. Because you just want to keep hearing it over and over again.
Right.
It's like, yes, it's fine. It can be the same story over and over again. It's great.
I've worked I've worked in like not public service, customer service for so long that I say thank you to literally everything. I just met the neighbor across the street, and like apropos of nothing, I just said thank you as I was walking away, and I thought I said, oh my gosh, ugh.
Just so embarrassed afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah. Instead of nice meeting you, just thanks. No, thank you. Anyway, he's a nice guy. I don't remember his name.
Well, he could have been too nice. It didn't leave much of an impression.
No. Well, that was my fault. What were you guys talking about?
Marvel and DC.
Oh,
generally.
cool.
Yeah.
Good.
What's your experience with Superman, with Clark Kent? What version of this character works for you best, if there is a version of this character that works for you best?
Yeah, you mentioned that show from a while back, and I loved that show growing up. That was a big thing.
That show.
So that I think that instilled in me the importance of the humanity of Clark Kent. And when I had asked my best friend Robbie to give me some Superman comics to convince me, like, hey, convince me to love Superman because I don't.
Yeah.
And he does. He gave me a few, and I can't remember the titles now, but there was one where Superman he either is powerless or he just is not using his powers. I can't remember which now. Mm-hmm. And he's just walking the earth and like walking around, like interacting with people.
Yeah. I think that's the J. Michael Straczynski Grounded run from a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Yep, it is Straczynski. And it's just brilliant. I love that version of Superman where he's just interacting with everyday life. He's not out fighting these galactic wars and destroying these gladiatorial beasts. He's just interacting with humans, and it's really interesting to see. And you can do some great character things with that.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I think my earliest experience with the character of Superman was also my earliest experience with the character of like Batman and Wonder Woman and everyone. I'm talking about the Justice League cartoon from was that the late 90s, like early 2001, something like that?
I think it was late 90s because it came after the Batman and Superman animated shows.
Right. And I don't and actually I do remember the Batman animated series because coming before that. So I've known about Batman my entire life. I think we went and saw like the Tim Burton Batmans whenever I was a very wee babby. But as far as Superman goes, it was definitely the Justice League version of him that I saw. And then I was growing into my Buffy the Vampire Slayer phase and was not impressed by Clark Kent. I was like, this girl's 5'2" and like 130 pounds soaking wet. I think I'm going to watch her show instead. Much more closer to what I can achieve to be. And then I don't think whenever the Kevin Spacey Superman came out, is that Superman Returns? Yeah. I did not see that one, just had zero interest. But whenever I heard that Zack Snyder was doing Superman, and that came out, I got really excited because I had only seen one other Zack Snyder film, and that was the movie 300, which I watched at like 3 a.m. on a school night because I was sick, and it happened to be on TV. And I was like, this is amazing. This is brilliant. This is great. I was also very sick, so I don't know if I would still have those same opinions now watching that film again. But yeah, so I don't know if I have like a particular Superman that I'm like really into at this moment yet because I feel like I'm still trying to get to know him. What I do know is that Vinton and I recently watched like the first Superman movie, like the very first one. We popped that on and we're watching it and I was stunned by how hopeful he was and how happy he was as compared to like the Zack Snyder versions, which is what I had been seeing because I had just rewatched Man of Steel and then had just seen Batman versus Superman. And I was like, Superman's actually got like a pretty cool life and he's aware of that and is like a happy guy. And it was a little discordant to me. And I can see how a lot of people who are fans of Superman see what Zack Snyder is doing and then immediately say, he has no idea who Superman is, which is all I've heard Robbie say over and over, I think.
Yeah, I think I've heard a lot of people say that. That's a lot of people's complaint against him, that he doesn't know who Superman is.
I think absolutely. Optimism and idealism are fundamental aspects of the character. He's supposed to, as I said, be the best of us. He's supposed to lead by example.
Yeah.
And that's absent when you have this tortured, tormented martyr figure, which is, I think, arguably a viable approach to the character. But you can't combine that with a kind of nihilistic view of humanity. He can't believe that humans aren't worth saving because
Yeah.
that kind of invalidates the entire character.
Right.
I think that he works best as an inspirational figure. Interestingly, one of my favorite examples of Superman right now is happening on the CBS show Supergirl.
Okay, is Supergirl good? Let's talk about this for a second.
I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't either.
I don't know if I would say it's good. I would say that I really like it.
Okay, you know what? That's completely legitimate.
It's so fresh. It's so energetic. Callista Flockhart as Cat Grant is one of the best things on television right now. She's just brilliant. But it absolutely encapsulates that sense of hope. These are people who aren't living in Metropolis. These are people who have their own, amateur Supergirl. They're looking at the big blue. They're looking at Superman as a figure of absolute hope and optimism. His presence in the world makes us all better. We all aspire because of him. And I love that aspect of the character.
Yeah.
That absolutely should be, I think, what heroes are. I mean, that's the whole point of superheroes, is to have somebody to look up to and to want to try to emulate. And so I think that it is, I mean, it was funny. Whenever we first walked out of Batman versus Superman, the first time that we saw it, we went with a big, huge group of us. And I remember somebody just saying, if Zack Snyder just wanted to make like a film about sad superheroes, he already did that. He did The Watchmen. Like, why is he continuing to do that thing?
And that was kind of my argument coming out of both of his films, really, was that Watchmen is supposed to be inspired by Batman and Superman. Like, those comics are supposed to take you to Watchmen. But then he flips it and he uses Watchmen as a starting place to then tell Batman and Superman stories.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, this seems, you've just...
Which isn't what I want, because I watched Watchmen and it was just so depressing. Like, I don't want to see a bunch of depressed superheroes. I want them to...
For all that it's a tragic story, it's absolutely true to the source material.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
This is supposed to be Watchmen is the dark take. What if superheroes were really real, brackets, and also the world was terrible and everyone was awful and nothing good ever happened? What is all of that?
Ugh. That sounds terrible.
I kind of liked his approach. I liked his respectful approach to the source material when he did Watchmen. I don't like it as a film. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's so dreary.
Yes.
But then I'm not the world's biggest fan of Watchmen the comic either. You're right, though, taking that spirit and using that as a starting point for what will be a Justice League story. Yeah, I don't know that I can go down that road with you.
Yeah, because now it doesn't matter who makes those other films. They have to match that tone.
Yeah.
I guess they can switch over time slowly, but you can't like make a radical change from that if you're going to start it all up with this.
Yeah, I guess the only way you could do it would be to come in either with a new POV character or a POV character who isn't so locked into this grimdark. It can't be Superman. It can't be Batman.
Right.
If this could be a Wonder Woman movie that happens to be about the Justice League, I think she's got energy, she's got presence. She could certainly lead the movie.
Absolutely.
And
she also was the only character. Yeah, she was the only character in that film who looked like she was having a good time.
Right.
Yes.
She is just terrific.
Oh my gosh.
What did you guys think of we're just bouncing around all over the place here,
that's
as
fine.
we tend to do here on Crisis on Infinite Podcast. What did you guys think of the brief appearances of The Flash, of Aquaman, of Cyborg? How did that stuff work for you?
I mean, you threw out the phrase heavy-handed earlier. Here's the thing that got me frustrated is I've heard Zack Snyder talk a lot of trash on Marvel for having post-credit scenes. He just hates them for some reason. And yet
Zack
he
Snyder,
decided
what is your problem?
He decided to take one and he was like, "Oh, I have to have this in my movie, but it can't be a post-credit scene because I hate those." So he shoved it into the middle of the movie.
Yeah, it was Randy, our producer over on Odd Man Out, because he had seen the movie as well and we were talking about it, and he goes, yeah, my favorite part of the movie is whenever we got introduced to all of the Justice League via an email. And I was like, you're exactly right. What is going on in this movie?
Yeah. I think it's not great narrative to introduce the characters that way.
Yeah.
I was really pleased to see a take on Aquaman that looks authentically cool.
Oh,
He
yeah.
does look really cool. Yeah, that is the one thing is that what is his name in real life? Jason
Yep, you got me.
Khal
That's an
Drogo.
excellent question.
I'm bad at actor names.
Yeah, Khal Drogo.
Yeah, exactly. Who wants to
Let's see here. Yeah, right? Jason Momoa.
Jason Momoa. I almost said
Yes.
mimosa. Jason Momoa as Aquaman looked amazing, like just absolutely stunning. And I was really, I mean, like, again, like, why are you showing us this super cool stuff that's only lasting for, mere moments if you're not going to do an end credit sequence?
Well, I think a lot of people, that's where they get their argument that Justice League is just a big trailer, or just Batman versus Superman is just a big trailer for Justice League.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
Could
where a
well
lot of
be.
people pulled that argument from.
I felt like it was a 2.5 hour long trailer for Wonder Woman, which I was into because she was my favorite part of that film.
I'd watch a 10-hour trailer for Wonder Woman.
Seriously. Well, 10 hours is a really long time.
You know what?
But
She's really good.
she
though.
is really good though, so I might.
Okay, if you can take 10 hours and make it, I don't know, 8 hours of Wonder Woman, maybe 2 hours for the Lois Lane spin-off movie that I would love to see.
That would also be really good. Oh, here's a
Just
fun
Lois
fact.
Lane, investigative reporter.
Lois Lane's totally mundane, but not really because she's an investigative reporter. Adventures.
Oh, also, it wouldn't be mundane because she's always in the right place.
That is her
It's like-
superpower. Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
there's no reason she should have been on that military helicopter or plane with the key, the Superman key that they were putting in, and they were dropping.
right, yeah.
There's no reason they should have allowed her on that. There's no reason that she should have been going to half the places she was doing, but she's Lois Lane. She's always there.
She gets to do whatever she wants. Fun fact about that. Apparently Amy Adams 3 times in her career has tried out for the part of Lois Lane. The first time was for Superman Returns and she didn't get it. Then there was supposed to be another Superman movie that ended up getting canceled that I forget. I used to know who was going to direct it.
Was that the Kevin Smith one?
Yes, I
Oh,
think
yeah,
so.
yeah.
Maybe,
Right.
possibly. But that one never ended up getting done. And so then whenever Zack Snyder was doing this one, Man of Steel, and she was trying out for it, she said, I knew that I had to get it because at this point it was ridiculous. Like, if I didn't get it this time, what's even the point? And I'm glad that they did it because I genuinely enjoy Amy Adams,
Yeah.
and I think that she does a really, really good job.
I think
agree.
she's terrific. Good in everything.
Agreed. Let's see. Is there anything else about Man of Steel that we need to touch on?
I'm glad that there wasn't as much product placement in Batman vs. Superman as
Oh
there was
my
in Man of
gosh.
Steel.
Let me crash
big
into this Pepsi
advertisement.
machine through the IHOP into a Sears. I didn't even know Sears was a thing anymore.
It wouldn't have driven me as crazy as if the signs had been destroyed at some
Right.
point. But the sign, like Sears, is completely obliterated, but the sign is like glowing and bright and perfect and clean at the end of it.
If only we'd known that. If Batman had just had his armor sponsored.
Yes!
If he'd been
would've been
branded like a
fine.
NASCAR driver, Superman wouldn't have been able to lay a finger on
That's
him.
right.
You're absolutely right. It's so intrusive. I actually kind of have a soft spot for the IHOP thing. I don't know why that one is okay by me.
Maybe
The rest of it is a little
I
heavy-handed.
think I'm fine with product placement. Do it. I mean, we use products every day.
That's true.
But why do the Kryptonians keep coming back to IHOP every time? Like every time they crash in, they're in IHOP again.
They haven't had pancakes in like 33 years. All right.
There's
That's
this
a
magnetism.
really good point.
This
Yeah,
magnetism.
I'd be willing to do some crazy things to get pancakes after 33 years, let me tell you.
Oh
And
man.
his friend that worked at the IHOP from childhood, it seemed like they were going to do something there, and I was really into it. I was like, "Yeah, bring that beat back. Let's explore his character." And they're like, "Nope, he just
Nope,
works at the
JK.
IHOP."
Yeah, it's so weirdly structured. The first arc of that film is because we've got this prologue sequence of Kal-El walking the earth, of Clark walking the earth, which is, for me at least, an interesting perspective. I like that take on the character. He doesn't have roots. He doesn't have an identity yet.
Right.
He comes to that. That's all pretty good. We intersperse that, though, with these flashbacks back to his youth, which kind of work, except that they're addressing this fundamental tension in the film, and this for me is the reason why this version of Jonathan Kent doesn't really work for me. The idea that being safe is more important than standing up, the idea that he shouldn't use his
Right.
powers, that he shouldn't expose himself. I can kind of understand why his father would come to that conclusion, but the movie ultimately kind of lends it this authorial support. It is almost making a statement. And that for me is problematic. I'm not sure how I feel about a Clark that could allow his father to just be killed by a tornado.
Oh my gosh.
No,
Yeah,
that drives
I don't-
me crazy because he tells them just before that in the film that, hey, I don't want you to reveal your identity, but you will eventually have to decide. And when that time comes, I'll help you make the right decision, whatever. So he's basically telling him, hey, you'll have to decide this eventually. You'll have to reveal it eventually. But just don't do it when I'm about to get killed by a tornado. That's the worst moment. Don't dare save me from that in front of those people. That's not the right moment. Any moment but that's fine for some reason, but not that one.
It's completely ridiculous. I don't know. First of all, the tornado scene is complete. I mean, like, we live in Tornado Alley. We've lived here for a long time. We know how to, like, we saw all the people running under the, like, overpass, and we're like, that's not, you don't go there during a tornado.
All dead.
No, you're all dead. Every one of you will die. But, I mean, Zack Snyder doesn't know how tornadoes work or how Superman works. So, you know, what does he care?
Mostly he doesn't know how Pa Kent works. And that's my
true.
complaint.
Yeah, no, that is a problem.
So when we were watching the original Superman, and Robbie had brought this up as well, and I think you had also, like, when Jonathan Kent dies of a heart attack, that's supposed to be... It means so much more because no matter what your superpower is, you can't do anything
save someone from a heart attack as
about
Superman.
that.
Your strength is of no use here. And that's a big emotional pivotal point for Clark Kent, Superman.
Right. And when I learned that, it made the scene with the tornado that much more ridiculous because it's like, listen, why would you choose to change that at all? That's already, like, narratively perfect.
Yeah. It's a really common beat for superhero stories to go to. I guess minor spoilers for season 5 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer coming up. Just before starting to record this podcast, I was recording the podcast about The Replacement, the third episode of Buffy's 5th season, wherein Joyce Summers, Buffy's mother, has a headache.
Oh, yeah.
And it's foreshadowing something awful that's coming later in the season that's just unstoppably tragic and so powerful because it's the thing Buffy can't fight.
Oh, man. I cannot wait.
Having Jonathan Kent die of a heart attack, something that can't be prevented, something that can't be saved no matter how super you are, that is narratively perfect. Having Jonathan Kent die in a tornado because, son, I've looked into the future and you're going to need some motivation in the third act. None of that works. None of it hangs together.
Right.
We've given Superman, and it's all the worse because we make it so explicit in Batman versus Superman.
I know.
We've given Superman the Batman origin story.
Why did this happen?
Don't be called Martha if you live in the DC
Oh
universe. It's a
my
bad
gosh.
idea.
Yes. It's hard not to bounce around all over the place. There's just so much.
Well, to bring it back for a second, that just before Pa Kent dies of the heart attack in the first Superman movie, the Christopher Reeves ones,
Which is so good.
He has that same beat of he's talking to his dad and he's like, I don't know what to do. I want to use my powers and I could be the best football star out there and I could do this. And he's like, I had thought about it. And for a long time, I thought you should conceal your identity and no one should ever know. This would be crazy and this would be really hard for you to deal with if people knew. But I know you're meant for something great and you should. He then basically goes on to say that idea is crazy. And then Zack Snyder took it and went, no, Pa Kent doesn't think it's crazy. He thinks it's what should be done.
Which
and I'm
is
like,
ridiculous.
That's the opposite of what he says.
Yeah.
Everything about the narrative construction, just to look at it from the perspective of craft, everything about that, it works against itself. It works against the core conflict of the story. It works against our understanding of Superman. It works against his literal, actual depiction. Motivating Clark's self-imposed exile through the death of his father is so much less purposeful and interesting than motivating that same exile by having him reveal himself.
Yeah.
Clark takes action, saves his father, and now he has to leave. And that's, the burden he has to carry.
That would have been utterly brilliant. That would have been awesome. And we just chose not to do that thing and instead have Kevin Costner just stick out a hand and slowly shake his head.
And I will say, because your soon-to-be husband, Sarah, will be very angry if I don't bring this up. His opinion on this is that Pa Kent said those things, but then he showed the opposite in his actions. And so you have to point that out, that he does kind of show that self-sacrificial, go out there and save people attitude, even though he's telling his son the other thing. And I did notice he does leave the options open. He does put it on the table. He's like, you may have to one day reveal it, but wait for it. Do it at the right time. Pick the right time.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think what we get isn't necessarily flawed at a conceptual level. It's just where the movie ends up. And that's kind of a problem with Man of Steel in general. We should probably talk about the enormous and woefully expensive, both financially and in terms of loss of life, collateral damage.
Yeah.
There's
in
so
the
much.
last act of the movie.
So much in that movie. And again, like when you're going into these movies and you don't know anything about the history of these characters, like I did not know. I mean, somebody was like, oh, well, Superman's rule about not killing people. I'm like, did you see the movie? He killed millions of people. Are you sure that's a rule?
The best commentary on this I have seen so far is the YouTube videos, How It Should Have Ended. They did one for Superman, and when Zod comes on the TV and starts talking, he looks at his mom and is like, I need someone to talk to and talk this out with and figure this out. And she goes, oh, well, there's a random priest you don't know down the street, which is what happens in the movie. And he goes, no, that's not going to work. He goes, oh, I know. I'll talk to my dead space dad that I have a hologram of that I can discuss this with. And he flies off.
All about General Zod.
So he flies off and goes, what should I do? And he tells him, and he flies up and destroys Zod before he even reaches Earth. And then he's sitting in a cafe with Batman, and Batman's like, so you saved the day and they never even made it to Earth? And he's like, yeah. He's like, man, can you imagine how many people would have died if they would have brought that flight down here? And he's like, yeah, that would have been crazy.
That would be terrible.
Like, all the
can you
damage.
Imagine?
And he's like, yeah, I don't have the money to pay for that on my salary. And Batman's like, I do, because I'm Batman. And then they make a joke at the very end. It's like, about killing Zod. He's like, I could if I had to. But no, I don't want to do that. It's like, yeah, that's Superman.
It's really tough to reconcile that narrative arc with the core identity of this character.
Right, yeah.
If Superman isn't saving people, then he's not Superman.
Right.
He reads in that movie, I mean, both Marvel and DC have had various almost parodies, various alternate, takes on the Superman mythos. Where you just have this incredibly superpowered jerk who doesn't care about the consequences of his actions.
Right.
Yeah.
Superman himself shouldn't play like that.
No, he absolutely shouldn't.
It's really tough. But it does lead into the beginning of Batman versus Superman,
Yes.
which I found completely convincing and completely authentic. And this is why, for me, Affleck is doing it. I can't wait for his solo Batman movie.
I thought that Affleck did a really, really great job, and I appreciated it more the second time that I went to go see Batman versus Superman, because the first time I saw it, and they're putting like Bruce Wayne into this spectacle and into all of the action that's happening, the first thing that I thought of was the novel Ender's Shadow. Which I love Ender's Game with all my heart and
I have
soul.
yet to read any of the Shadow books, but I love the Ender books.
Okay, all right. No, you're totally fine.
Yeah, just the
okay, I
Shadow
was about to have a
ones.
complete
Just the
panic
Shadow
attack.
ones I haven't read.
They're fine. But Ender's Game is my absolute favorite. And then I went through and I read Ender's Shadow, which is not quite a sequel, but it happens like kind of at the same time, but it's from a different character's POV. And Orson Scott Card is putting in things like saying that people are giving lines sarcastically and things in order to like cover his tracks for how they worked 30 years ago when he wrote the first novel. It drove me crazy because I was like, no, that's not no, you're just retconning to make it work for your new story. Why are you doing this? And so I was worried that it was going to be like that in Batman versus Superman, but on the second viewing, it did make more sense, especially since in Zack Snyder's universe, Gotham and Metropolis are literally across the river from each other. So yeah, absolutely, Bruce Wayne is going to show up and try to, do the thing. But I mean, when you're one guy in a suit that isn't an actual like alien with mega super ultra powers, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the take on that. I like very much that opposition of Metropolis and Gotham. They've always been two sides of the same coin. They're both New York. They're just New York on its worst day and New York on its best.
Yeah.
And I love that take. Having them opposed across the bay like that, having this world of darkness that is Bruce Wayne's world, and having the world of theoretically light, though I think we see perhaps a little too little of that.
Yeah.
That's Clark Kent's world. That really worked for me. Yeah, the problem of Batman being capable of even challenging Superman, there's a power problem in this movie, and I think it's simply that Superman is too powerful.
Yes.
I think it's simply that we have him zipping around the world to destroy the world engine in Man of Steel. He zips back, he does all the stuff, that's great. Having him be powered to that level and then standing alongside Wonder Woman, who just seems to be invulnerable with some really nifty bracelets.
Yeah.
And then Batman, who's not even invulnerable.
Nope.
I don't know.
Pure
for me,
power
that
of
kind
will.
of
Yeah, it was really it is a problem because because when you read the comics, and I'm still learning this, because here's the thing is whenever we were talking about this and I'm looking at this movie and I go, you guys, if Superman punches Batman dies. Like, there's no
Batman
question.
turns into a red mist. And
Yeah,
there's
there's
nothing left.
there. Like, that
He's
is
erased
what,
from time. by
Exactly.
that punch.
Yeah, he just he's erased from all existence. He just is no non-being. But then I had all of my friends who are Batman fans trying to be like, well, no, this, and this, and I was just like, no, I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense. So I'm trying to learn more. And Nathan was able to present it in a way that within the comics, just talking about how Batman, Bruce Wayne, is supposed to be this paragon of humanity and is supposed to, and all this because he doesn't have these, mystical powers. His magic ability is all the money. and all the toys.
And training.
And the
He has lots of
training, yeah.
training.
And so that I was able to swallow, but in Zack Snyder's film, it makes zero sense to me. I don't understand. Why is your Batman suit not in the... And then people are like, oh, well, he's got the kryptonite gas and he's making Superman weaker. And I go, okay, just because you win by making your enemy weaker doesn't make you the better combatant. Like, the only way you can beat Superman is by taking away his powers. That means that Superman is more powerful than you are.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. He definitely is. Like,
Yeah.
you have to have a way to take him down. I think Batman's superpower is will. Like, he's not willing to stop.
Yes.
He's like, you can kill me. That's fine. I'm not going to stop.
It also helped a lot when we watched the Justice League movie, Justice League Doom, which I
Yeah.
really enjoyed, and
animated movie.
that kind of helped to reconcile a lot of that as well. But yeah, Zack Snyder basically made like an uber god, and then was like, oh, and also here's Batman in his little metallic suit, and no, don't worry, he's gonna be totally fine, you guys.
It's to kind of, move to the other side of the aisle for just a moment. I promise, just a moment. It's one of the great triumphs of the Marvel movies is managing to bring these very disparate characters together and have them
Yes.
all feel like they're a part of the team.
Yes.
Where you've got Cap, who is our Batman analog. He's just the best human being, not through training the way that Batman is, but through the super soldier serum. Then you've got an actual god, and then you've got Hawkeye, who's a guy with a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
They all manage to work together in a way that already the Justice League seems like it's pulling in
I know!
different directions.
And it's been so funny because whenever, like, with our Marvel game, Josh Unruh from Okie Geek Podcast, who runs our Marvel Heroic RPG for us, was joking with us and teasing us, saying that in the DC universe, everything is based on trust, not like in the Marvel universe. Well, I'm watching these movies that Zack Snyder is putting out, and I'm like, trust is not a part of this equation at all, sir.
No.
Nobody trusts anybody in this. So that was hard to watch also because I want good things for Batman and Superman. Oh my gosh. Also, it drove me crazy that we were getting Batman's origin story again. I get this story,
Yeah.
I swear, every other year since I was born. Like,
to be fair,
did you guys know that Bruce Wayne became Batman because some dude shot his parents in front of him when he was a
don't
little
think
kid and he
that's
fell
how-
into
I don't
some
remember
sort
that
of cave,
happening that
oubliette, something, and there were
Doesn't
bats.
sound familiar.
Really? Yeah. It was really interesting of Zack Snyder to take the character in that direction and present that to us.
Yeah, I understand that argument. I do think that they always have to think about people coming into it without having seen a Batman movie.
But everyone on the planet saw the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, right?
Well,
Except people who were like born afterwards, right?
That's true.
And even those people, they know what happened.
But
Right.
even in the comic books, literally every like 4 issues, Batman's like looking back on his parents dying.
I mean, I guess it's a big deal. I don't, and
It
I
is,
don't want to
like,
say that lightly.
All
I
motivation
mean,
of him being Batman.
right. Yeah. But anyway, I was glad that it was short. It was mercifully short,
Yeah.
at least. I was
Well,
like, oh, thank
and there's
goodness.
so many other things that they left out
Yeah.
of that movie that would have made more narrative sense. That it's like, you could cut the origin and put some of those things in and give more reason for him to
Can
hate
you cut the
Superman
origin
more.
and explain to me what is going on in this nightmare sequence, please? For like 2
Yes.
seconds.
Yeah.
For a movie that's, I don't know, 2.5 hours long,
Oh my
it
gosh.
feels so rushed. There are certain parts
Yes.
of it that just feel so rushed and so sketched, so flimsy, so insubstantial. That's a big problem, I think. I'm glad that Snyder's not doing the Justice League movie because
Yeah.
when you're doing that, it takes a Whedon
he's
It
to
does.
not.
weave together that kind of...
I thought he
Oh, is
was.
I heard that he was.
I'm excited if he's not.
Okay.
Because I had heard some people
To
freaking out that
IMDb.
he was, and they were like, "Oh, I'm really upset that he's still doing the Justice League movie."
No, please,
no.
no,
But I
no.
hope not.
Oh, I'm having some trouble tracking this down. Let me see.
Justice League Dark movie reportedly set to shoot in 2016.
That's not a
Ugh.
thing. That's not what we're looking for. That's like
Oh, okay, that's a different thing.
Yeah,
Great,
Justice League
excellent.
Dark's like evil Justice League.
What?
That's a thing that
We'll
exists
talk
in the
about it
world.
later.
Yeah, IMDb doesn't have him. Oh no, director.
No.
The Justice League Part 1 and the Justice League Part 2. So,
Yeah.
Well,
yeesh.
let's all take a moment.
Moment of
Go
silence.
refill our drinks.
The thing with Zack Snyder is that he is clearly capable of putting together beautiful compositions.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
he can make this stuff look incredible,
Mm-hmm.
and he has an enormously deft skill with kineticism, with motion and movement
Mm-hmm.
and weight. One of
Yeah.
the things that I do love about the excessive action sequences in both Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman is that Superman feels solid. He feels
Yeah.
heavy.
Yeah.
I just recently rewatched the third Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, the one with Topher Grace as Venom, which is not as bad as I remember it being. It's actually pretty fun.
I've
but it's
never seen that movie. I didn't see
Sandman is the reason to watch that movie.
Okay, I'll
Thomas
pick it
Hayden
up.
Church's Sandman is pretty great, let me tell you. And a weird musical number right in the middle of the movie for no good reason.
Yeah. That's what the symbiote does, apparently.
What?
Apparently it does.
Makes
It
you
changes the genre
emo.
of your film. That's how powerful it is.
Yeah.
But I'm watching that movie, and it's partly earlier special effects, of course, but also just a different approach to superheroics. All the characters feel so light. They all feel so floaty. I love the weight and the kineticism. There's that moment when Batman is standing over Clark, and he has his giant bat-armored boot on his chest.
Yeah.
And you can feel the weight of that thing.
Yeah.
So I like Zack Snyder's approach to cinematography in general. I feel he gets a little cluttered and a little ambitious in some of the larger set pieces.
Yeah.
But his grasp on narrative is not where it needs to be for movies with this many moving parts.
Well, I think, and I've heard this from a couple of people, that the way he puts it together, and he does this with all of his movies, but especially here and a little bit with Man of Steel, he leaves a lot to your imagination to fill in the gaps and to do his job for him.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that you have to come up with the reasons for. Like, it seems like this is a 2.5 hour movie that was cut down from a 5-hour movie. There's a lot missing, a lot of gaps that aren't filled, and
Right.
you have to fill them, and it's your job to make sense out of them,
Right.
and to come up with reasons why Lex Luthor's doing this, and why Batman is upset at Superman, and why Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne somehow know each other and would be introduced to the party, and it's just like these things, these worlds.
Why was Lex Luthor introducing Clark Kent? I mean, how long has he known who these guys
Yeah,
are?
and why did he hire a graphic designer to come up with logos for all the superheroes?
That is an excellent question. An excellent question. Though by no means the most baffling thing that Lex Luthor does in these movies.
by no
What did
means.
you guys make of Jesse Eisenberg? What did you make of the Social Network take on Lex Luthor?
So here's the thing. Again, I know nothing about Lex Luthor. My only background information about Lex Luthor is I think I've seen clips of Kevin Spacey's performance in the one with Kevin Spacey. Superman Returns, that's the one, right?
Yeah.
And then vaguely remembering some Justice League cartoons with Lex Luthor. And it was a very different take. I thought it was really interesting, and I thought that he did a good job. I have no idea how true to the character he is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my Lex Luthor is so Superman, people talk about him being the Ubermensch. Lex Luthor's the Ubermensch. He's all that man can be. And that's the reason he wants to take down Superman.
Yeah.
Because Superman's the god. And that's Lex Luthor to me. He's this stoic creature who, like in the Justice League cartoon that I grew up with, would stand face to face with Superman and not wince. He's like, hey, I'm going to take you down.
But you can
So
do that
interesting.
when you have a Superman who has that kind of strict moral code where
Yes.
he wouldn't just, beat Lex Luthor into a
Yeah.
bloody pulp.
Right.
You can have that tension. You can't do that with the Snyder version of Superman,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
and I liked Jesse
The
Eisenberg.
Snyderman.
I like the energy.
Done. Sold. There it is.
Yes.
Episode title.
Hashtag. I like the energy that he brought to the role, and I did like him in general. It kind of seemed like they were wanting to play like he's Lex Luthor's son or something, because he kept mentioning his dad, and he's not necessarily Lex Luthor. He's a younger. So I'm not sure what they were doing there. They didn't really fully explain it. But he seemed like he was channeling too much Joker to me. Like he wants chaos, and he's like, oh, I'm having fun and just watching everything burn, and I'm inviting these gods from other worlds to come destroy you because I hate you that much, and who cares if everything I love gets destroyed in the process, because I want chaos.
Yeah, you're absolutely right that the tension between Lex and Superman has always been the pinnacle of mankind versus something that is just not human, something
Yes.
that is greater by virtue of its essential nature. That is a really great philosophical distinction. That's a really great source of conflict for these characters. To have this Lex who occasionally swung toward that, who made the argument, who had the speeches about the god falls and the man rises and all
Right.
of this portentous language, so little of that was reflected for me in his actions, in his
Yes.
choices,
Yeah.
in his plan. I love the idea of a Lex Luthor co-opting Batman to fight Superman. That makes a lot of sense to me. That absolutely speaks to that philosophical division. You're right. There's a manic energy. There is a Heath Ledgerian, I suppose,
Nice.
approach to this character that doesn't quite sit right and doesn't seem to be internally consistent. And then his his use of Kryptonian technology, this incredibly convenient Kryptonian technology to create Doomsday.
Yeah.
Not only is that a little unclear, I'm not sure what he thinks he's doing. Yeah. Though he seems happy with the results. I don't know.
And I mean, spoilers a little bit. Toward the end of the movie, he kind of reveals his plan. He's like, oh yeah, that didn't work, but there's more coming. And I knew that was going to happen. And it's just this idea to me of like, you can't plan for that. That's not something you can understand. You're not God. What is happening here?
Thing? Yeah.
And so he obviously has to just want chaos and destruction. And that's not who Lex Luthor is. No. He thinks that he's saving humanity by destroying Superman.
Exactly right.
I hope that the scene with the creation of Doomsday from the corpse of Zod is more thoroughly explained when we get the extended edition director's supercut, whatever. Because I was legitimately so confused. So you've got Zod's body and you're throwing it into like the half-drowned Genesis chamber, which is just like, oh, Lex, you're here now. And so, yeah, you want control of the ship? Yes, I do. Okay, cool. Here you go. Even though you're not a Kryptonian, whatevs. And then he cuts his hand open, he drips the blood all over Zod's face and then lowers him into the water. And then the computer is like, hey, this abomination has been outlawed. And I'm like, when was the last time that you had human blood mixing with Kryptonian DNA? Is that like a thing? And then, if that is true, I really, really, really hope that Clark and Lois are using protection, because otherwise we are going to have a serious, serious problem.
Yeah.
I love the computer at that last moment, too, where Lex Luthor gets his great, and where is Krypton now? And the computer's like, no, you make a good point. Okay.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Wow, burn. No, you're right. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's weird to me. I understand that they had to come up with a new way to present Doomsday because you can't do what they did in the comics.
What do they do in the comics?
It's really convoluted and complicated comic stuff. But basically, there's this space baby who's in this space chamber, and he's trained to be, he's basically hardened to be the biggest, baddest fighter of all time, and then sent to Earth. And you can't necessarily do it because there's too much to explain, and I mean that doesn't even cover it.
I'll wiki it later.
Weird. But they gave him Superboy's origin. They're like, now he's Lex Luthor meets Superman, which is Superboy's origin, not Doomsday's origin. And that also kind of takes out the chance of there being a Superboy, because now it's like, oh well, if you do that, it's just going to create Doomsday. It's not going to create Superboy.
Yeah, no, you're right. We can't really get that take on Superboy in this reality, which is interesting because we have, this is going to get a little in the weeds maybe, but we have the intrusion of the Flash into the timeline, which is an element of Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah, which unless you've read that, you have no idea what's going on in that scene, and you have no idea that that's the Flash.
I have no idea what's happening.
I didn't know that was the Flash at first until I thought about it later.
It is literally because I reread Crisis like 3 weeks ago that I recognized the scene and was like, oh, that must be, that's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, watching it in the movie, it's really tricky. I do have this tiny glimmer of hope. I do have like this spark within me that won't yield, that in a few years, once we've come through the Justice League movies, once Zack Snyder has moved on to his next thing, whatever that's going to be, that we will have a Crisis event in the DC multiverse where we can actually bring together elements from their movie universe, elements from their animated universe, elements from their TV universe, because the stuff they're doing on TV is pretty great. Yeah. I like Supergirl. I really love The Flash. I'm not so into Arrow, but that's a story for another time. Yeah. And even the Legends of Tomorrow series, which I haven't seen yet, I hear is interesting at least.
Yeah, I think it meets both of those. It's in between Arrow and Flash for me.
Yeah. So that's pretty great if we can draw this stuff together.
Yeah.
it's apparently playing a related character.
It's DC Doctor Who is what it is.
Yeah. Which plus Wentworth Miller playing Captain Cold. I have this weird relationship with Wentworth Miller where the more over the top and cartoonish he gets, the more I genuinely, unironically, just love the hell out of him.
I agree
he plays
completely.
Straight, I don't like it. But as Captain Cold, he's magnificent. So I'm hoping we're going to have a Crisis event where we can approach the DC multiverse and actually treat these like they're parallel Earths, which we're exploring in The Flash and we're exploring in Supergirl. And then we can have some kind of event where Grant Gustin from the Flash TV show appears opposite, Affleck as Batman on the big screen. That would be great, but we're years out from that.
Yeah, that's probably going to take a while.
Knowing The Flash, they'll take it in a more lighthearted, goofy turn, and they'll find a parallel universe where George Clooney's Batman and the Batsuit has nipples.
We can only hope, right? That would be the masterstroke. If they somehow manage to imply within the frame of Batman versus Superman that all the other Batman were Batman of parallel realities,
oh my gosh,
that would be my favorite thing. We don't talk about Val Kilmer. We don't talk about that Batman. That guy, yeah, not so good.
I don't understand what you're talking about. Val Kilmer was never Batman.
I think Clooney Batman was the first Batman I ever saw.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's it's interesting watching Affleck and seeing how much Clooney there is. There's
Yeah.
a lot
True.
of like
That's
chiseled,
actually true.
Yeah. The second time viewing Batman versus Superman, I had a very similar experience to when I rewatched Man of Steel, which was that I genuinely thought that all of the individual performances were magnificent. Like, everyone is doing a really great job, but you put it all together and it's kind of a giant mess, and I don't know what happened or how it happened or why it happened. I mean, I have some ideas. But anyway, it was frustrating because I would rather have like the whole pie be messed up than like, well, the crust is good, but do not eat it with the filling because, oh Lord, we did something terrible and it might be poison.
Yeah, the individual performances, I completely agree. Just great. I really liked Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. I liked him so much more in Batman vs. Superman than I did in Man of Steel.
Yes, I agree.
I thought he worked. Jeremy Irons is such a great, weary, world-worn Alfred. That's such an interesting take on that character.
Yeah.
You can go down the list. And of course, I have a personal thing for Holly Hunter.
Holly Hunter is
adore
great.
Her. And she's so good.
So amazing. I didn't know what was going to happen with her character, and I was so thrilled every time she like came up against Lex and absolutely would not back down. And I was just like, yes, you go, girl. And like, that was another thing. I'm walking out of this movie and I'm like, who comes out looking the best in this film? All the ladies. All the women just look amazing in this movie, which I really appreciated. I know that some people were kind of bashing it, being like, oh, well, Lois got kidnapped and Martha Kent got kidnapped and all this. And I'm like, well, I mean, of course you're going to kidnap Superman's mom. What do you want? And Lois only kind of got kidnapped because she was doing her job as an investigative reporter. Yeah. I mean, then we find out that like Lex did the whole thing or whatever. But like, it isn't just a damsel in distress situation. These ladies are still pushing the story forward and still making choices and making things happen to them.
The only thing that I really didn't like there was when she throws the Kryptonian spear into the water just so that she can lay there almost drown and die.
My brother got really mad about that too, and like I have no problem with it personally, because if my superhero boyfriend is dying because of this giant glowing spear, I also am going to try and get that as far away from him as possible.
But that's not as far away from him as possible. That's over in the water.
Around the planet? What do you want me to do?
No, I'm saying that if she was that worried, she should take it and make sure no one else gets it.
Well, that's what she thought
Instead
it
of
was
just
doing.
going, I'll just put it over here.
No, I think you guys are being too hard on Lois in that moment.
To me, it just seemed like it's not her. It seemed like bad narrative to me. They just had to have a reason for her to be in trouble later.
Okay.
And so
exactly. I like the impulse that led to her throwing the spear away. I like the idea that she can help. I like that. But you're right. It is, I just threw that thing in there. Now I've got to go in and get it.
As soon as she throws it in, I go, oh, so she's going to have to go in there to get it again and almost drown. Yeah. I knew it was going to happen. It was way too heavy-handed.
See, maybe I'm really naive, but I was hoping that was going to be how they brought Aquaman into it. I was hoping that Aquaman would show up and just be like, hey, did you drop this? Don't pollute.
I halfway expected
Quit throwing crap in
Aquaman
the
to pull
ocean.
up through the water and be like, hey.
Yeah, but then I remembered, wait, it's inside a building, and I don't know where he's at, but...
Yeah, the geography of that entire arrangement is a little weird. I do like that we get the line from Batman saying, I led him to the port. No one's there.
Right.
This is totally safe. No one needs to worry. No one needs to write op-ed pieces about how we're destroying New York. It's fine, really.
I really, really liked that Batman's suit, instead of having to just do like the gravelly Christian Bale voice, he had a microphone that did it for him.
Yeah,
I thought that was
fun.
so cool.
I was
like,
fun.
that is brilliant.
Do we get a single I'm Batman?
I don't think so.
I didn't think so either.
So.
If there was one, I missed it.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that we're leaning away from that, because this script was we're blaming Zack Snyder for everything. The script was written by David S. Goyer, who also wrote the Chris Nolan Batman movie. So this is ostensibly at least something of a continuation of that Batman. I don't know how canonical it is.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I was curious about that. I didn't know, because again, we don't get any hard solid evidence, but I'm like, well, there's his house, which is still like a burnt like mess, and that happened in Nolan's Batman. And then depending on, because I was having difficulty with how do I phrase this? I thought that Batman had gone completely insane in this movie. And I like with his nightmare sequence, which if you're a comic book fan means a lot. If you're not, you're just like, why are there Superman Nazis? And what are we doing in like Fallout 4 suddenly? Why is this happening? I'm very confused. Please take me back to Metropolis.
Yeah, it's all references
Help,
to
please
something
help.
that you would only know if you were deep into the comic books.
So I had to have that
surface
explained to
level,
me.
deep into the comic books.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So I had no clue, and I did have it. I looked it up. I had it explained. I still am not entirely sure what's going on, but the way that I was able to reconcile it is I figure if this is Nolan's Batman, he's been Batman for, what, like 20-something years, I think he says? 20 years we've been doing this in Gotham?
Yeah.
I think that dressing up as a vigilante superhero and working in Gotham with all of, like, these, you know, baddest of the bad, we see the Robin suit in the Batcave that says, "Joke's on you," implying that the Joker killed Robin.
Just like in the comics,
of course, Batman has, like, I mean, Bruce Wayne is suffering from excruciating PTSD, has been doing this for so long that he really has kind of gone a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
And I think that really adds just a lot to his character. This fact that he's like just on the edge. I mean, and Alfred even points it out to him, and you know, like it makes people cruel is something that he says when they're talking about like the Bat brand and all this stuff. And the idea that, you know, they get their bro moment. Oh, your mom's name is Martha? My mom's name was Martha too.
Weird moment.
So weird.
Really weird.
And also, if you know what, he could tell you why he said Martha if you would get your stupid boot off his neck for like 2 seconds, man. Like, give him a chance. And then Lois Lane with her superpower to be wherever she needs to be for that moment jumps in and saves the day again, which is great. But then we get Wonder Woman, and Batman has seen like all these other superheroes for him to suddenly have purpose again. Like, and so I was much more okay with that.
Yeah.
All of that, the second viewing through, and it was a lot more cohesive and made a lot more sense.
Yeah, and I did like, if we had a better Superman, this would have made more sense, but it did kind of fix the character a little bit for me because my Batman doesn't kill people. And that's a big deal in the comics.
Right.
And I understand 20 years down the road, he's driven insane, basically. The Joker's obviously run his course, which aside, real quick, if Batman is killing people and the Joker has killed Robin in this universe, the Joker's dead. I'm sorry, there's no suicide squad.
Exactly what I took.
Yeah.
That is my headcanon.
Yeah.
That for me is the breaking point that gets us from Christian Bale Batman to Ben Affleck Batman.
Yeah, it's the divergent of paths.
Darkness.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you're right. Seeing this Batman seeing this Batman carry a gun, which is such a weird thing to see.
Yeah, not just kill, but like
wrong.
kill like willy-nilly. Like just straight up, like you're dead, you're dead, you're dead, eat lead, you're dead. I mean, like...
Which the Joker's, there's no way he's alive in this universe. They obviously are portraying him as that way, but Batman, he was number one to go down if he was going to start killing people.
Does Suicide Squad take place in this universe?
Yes, Ben Affleck is in it.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really problematic then. That's a huge misstep.
Yeah.
And I don't even read the comics, and I know that it's a misstep.
We can leave it open for them to do it right. But
right.
Yeah, it depends what kind of origin story we get for the Suicide Squad version of Joker. If he's an inheritor of a legacy title, the way that so many of the DC heroes are, he could be Joker 2.
Oh,
he could, there are ways of building that in, I think, that can account for it. But you're right. For me, that would be the breaking point. There's a tiny little detail that I meant to look up and didn't get to. When he hits Superman with the kryptonite gas and he starts talking about fear, are we supposed to infer that that's also the Scarecrow toxin?
Maybe, yeah.
It's entirely possible.
That's one of the weird things that gets me about this movie is they bring in a Batman with all of his history, and you're supposed to know it. It seems like to me. So I can definitely see that being the Scarecrow toxin there, and that's kind of...
What were we... they mentioned it in Justice League Doom. That's why I was like, how do I know about this? How do I know what this is?
So it's kind of weird to me to do that, because you're bringing in a Batman that everyone loves, but you're bringing him in so much later after everything and after he's been driven insane. And there's that moment that kind of fixes it for me just a little bit. I have to do a lot of headcanoning to fix it, but where he says that he failed Superman, it's like, you didn't fail Superman, you hardly knew Superman. What does that mean? And to me, if you had a perfect Superman, he failed Superman by killing people. He failed Superman by not being by him not being the Boy Scout.
Living up to the example.
Yeah, he's like, there's an example. But you don't have that Superman giving that example, so...
Right. But in the best versions of the Justice League, I think you're absolutely right. That is the dynamic. Superman is reaching upward and Batman is reaching downward, and there's or I guess they're in different positions reaching toward each other. That would probably make the metaphor work a little better, right? In any case, they are at opposite ends of the spectrum, and they manage to mediate each other. They manage to meet in the middle, and they're balanced by the mediating presence of Wonder Woman, which visually in the movie works so well. The way that she stands between them, the way that she unifies them, the way that they are automatically a team when she's on screen. There's something about her presence that is just... She is as far as I'm concerned, just an unalloyed success. She's just great.
So good. So good. I remember, the second time going through and watching this movie, I enjoyed all of it a lot more. The first time watching this movie, I was literally bored. I was bored for the first 2 hours because I was like, I have no idea what's going on. Everybody is really, really sad. Everybody is really angry or sad. It's all just a giant mess. Every time that Wonder Woman was on screen and that theme started to pick up, I was just like, please give me more. This is all I want. I want this. And then she finally shows up. And first of all, she shows up, she starts punching on Doomsday, and then we get that great joke where Superman's like, is she with you? And Batman goes, I thought she was with you.
Which
Batman,
is really dumb to me because
you emailed her like an hour ago.
Like, come on, dude.
Like, she's with you, man. You told her.
Greatest detective.
Meet us here.
Bruce is having a really tough day.
Yeah.
He really is. Yeah. So he's having some, again, he's like just this side of crazy. Yeah. But she showed up and I screamed yes in the middle of the theater. And then there was applause, like just spattering out because we all were just kind of like, when is, but
that's a great moment.
Yeah, it was so good. And from that point on, I was like, I'm finally in, I'm into this. Let's do this. And again, and I noticed this the second time viewing it, but, Wonder Woman is the only person in this movie who looks like she is enjoying herself. There's a point where she gets punched by Doomsday and he sends her flying back and she sits there and she kind of brushes herself off, grins hugely, and then jumps right back into it. And I'm just like,
spirit.
You are having a freaking blast. And I'm into it.
She works so well as Wonder Woman, but she also works as Diana Prince. I really liked the scenes that we get of her at Lex Luthor's party. I love the interactions between, civilian Wonder Woman and civilian Batman. I thought those interactions were just great. She manages to go toe to toe with Affleck when he is just delivering this bravura performance.
Yeah.
I think that she's magnificent.
They were wonderful to watch.
A good opportunity to segue into your recent addiction, Sarah, the comic book?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds really great. Do we have anything else about Batman versus Superman?
Closing comments. I just want to say I had a lot of fun with Batman versus Superman. I went in there with one thing, and I told everyone, Sarah was there, I told everyone what I wanted from this movie, and if it happened, I would leave happy, and it was that Batman beats the crap out of Superman, and the fight only stops because Batman wants it to. And that's what happened. And I told a few people behind me that I would get up and leave as soon as that happened, just so like, end of movie, that's fine, I'm done here.
No, that's it. Yeah.
And as soon as it did happen, I stood up, and everyone behind me started laughing because they had heard me say it before.
We made friends in the theater. We're good at making friends in theaters. We're a lot of fun. I mean, gosh, there were like 10 of us who went to see this movie at once. So
we made front row and back row friends with everyone that was around us.
It was hilarious because we were all just yapping really loud. But yeah, also, as soon as we left the theater, I purchased Wonder Woman's theme song, and it is now the only thing I listen to when I run. So
excellent.
It works out really well. Anytime that I'm like, man, I'm really tired and I just want like to be finished with my workday, I'm like, no, we can do this, and then start blasting that, and it really helps. It's so awesome. So, because of this movie, let's see, we saw this movie on a Saturday. On Sunday, Nathan and I were hanging out, and I said, I want Wonder Woman comics. I need Wonder Woman comics. I require, in order for my life to be complete, Wonder Woman comics. So we went to Hastings or Barnes & Noble, and I bought the first Wonder Woman comic for the New 52 done by, is it Brian Azzerello?
Brian Azzerello, yeah. Cliff Chiang does the art.
Yes. And then also just a comic that was like Sensational Comics featuring Wonder Woman, and there's like 5 or 6 short stories in there. I then bought the rest of his run, like as soon as all the rest of Azzerello's run. So I own copies or like volumes 1 through 6, and like a fish in water, just like ingested it so quickly and like loved it so much. It's the best, and Wonder Woman is awesome, and she's now my favorite superhero.
It's just such a striking piece of work. When the DC Universe gets rebooted every few years, and apparently we're on the brink of another reboot that's coming very soon. Yeah. When we went through Flashpoint and the New 52 books were launched, this was not one that I was looking at. I haven't read a lot of Brian Azzarello's work before. This is so good. I only picked up the first trade because you recommended it, then immediately went and got the rest of it. And I've only read the first 2 so far, but the first opportunity I get to read the rest of it, it's reworking Wonder Woman's origin story, rooting her so absolutely in this mythic landscape. Yeah. It works fantastically, giving her this agency, this absolute presence, and allowing the reader to kind of to meet her the way that people in the world would meet her. This doesn't, though it is, I guess, technically an origin story, we're being told the origin story as Wonder Woman is being told the origin story, as it's being revealed to her. That works for me just beautifully. What did you make of it, Vinton?
So my Wonder Woman that I know is from the animated series of the Justice League. So I'm not necessarily used to her being so deep into this world of mythology. I know it's related. I didn't read Wonder Woman comics growing up, and I didn't really read Justice League that much, so I only had like small knowledge there. It was mostly the animated series, which they do deal with mythology there, but it's usually the whole team, and there's something bigger going on as well.
Right.
So it was really interesting to me to delve into a single Wonder Woman story. Like Superman and Batman never show up, no one else shows up. It's just her and mythology. And from the knowledge I had of Wonder Woman, while I enjoyed the story a lot, and I thought Wonder Woman herself was portrayed really well, I really liked the way he portrayed her. Azzerello did a few things that really kind of upset me. The Zeus father thing, it wasn't that big of a deal, but
apparently it is a huge deal to people who are longtime fans of Wonder Woman. And see, this again is I don't know if I want to use like the word fault or like disadvantage, but again, I knew nothing about Wonder Woman except she's a member of the Justice League and she's the chick in the DC universe. Like that is what I knew about Wonder Woman. And so going through and reading this and seeing this new origin story where like, oh, well, it turns out that her father is Zeus. I was like, that's really cool. But other people have read this and they're like, no, you completely screwed it up. You messed it up entirely. It's not supposed to be this way.
Yeah, I mean, Wonder Woman's based out of feminist utopian fiction. That's where kind of the idea comes from of her island and everything in the comic versions. And she's supposed to be not born of man, and that's what makes her the perfect woman. And so it's kind of weird to throw that in there. And I can see someone doing it and doing it well. I do feel like you have to know what you're doing when you do that. And I feel like you have to know that you're going to get attacked for doing that. You're that's going to be a big statement, especially as a guy writer doing it. It's like,
absolutely.
You're going to get a lot of blowback off of that. But the bigger thing to me was the turning the whole island, Paradise Island, into monsters. In a few panels, they make them all rapist murderers.
It was a problem.
Unlike in the comics where they don't procreate, they're just immortals. Here they do every 30 years, and they do it by going onto a ship and forcibly mating with these men, whether they want it or not, is implied in the text. Yeah. And then they kill them and throw them overboard. And if they have male babies, they kill those too until they found a way to sell them into slavery. And it's like you just turned... I read an article by Kelly Thompson, who writes for CBR, and she actually, I found out recently, she's writing for Marvel now. She's doing A-Force, the female Marvel team, which is really cool. But she wrote about it, and she was talking about how Amazonians were an important model of female empowerment that were just villainized in a world where positive female role models are lacking. You're just taking some away now when we should be adding more.
No, I can definitely see that. I think that what worked for me immediately about the story was that it does reflect Greek myth. It does reflect the blood and the thunder and the turmoil and the tragedy of Greek myth.
Right.
And it's not, you're right, it's not nice, it's not pleasant, it's not something that is aspirational in any way. I absolutely accept that Wonder Woman was in a privileged position that has now been somewhat undermined as a feminist icon. A feminist icon in a medium that, let's face it, is still struggling to properly, present and reflect and respect its female characters. That's a really good point. It's not a point I'd considered, but it's really powerful. Perhaps there's something in the idea that setting Wonder Woman aside as this archetypal figure kind of separates and distances her from the experience of real women and maybe bringing her into this more mortal, more worldly, more bloody and dangerous realm, having her origin story be this compromised and imperfect thing. Maybe that gives you more narrative potential and a way of connecting Wonder Woman, the archetype, to, the world that she now lives in. I'm going to have to wait and see how the rest of the story works out. But
exactly. I've only read the first two volumes as well.
Yeah, and
so we're at the same place.
The other tricky thing is that it doesn't really get mentioned again throughout the rest of through volume 6. It literally is like the 3 panels where it's like the Amazonians showed up and they enchant all these men on these ships and then they sleep with them and then they kill them all and then they just move on, and then if they have a son, they get rid of him. And I remember and I just whistled right past it, the initial read through, because just like you were saying, Alastair, like Greek mythology was always my favorite mythology growing up, and so I'm like, that's absolutely Greek mythology. They just all over the place are raping and murdering everybody, basically. But and I don't want to say that to I would hate for anyone to assume that like I am okay with it just by whistling past it. It's obviously a problem, but I figured that it was kind of that. that grandiose, like, mythic storytelling, and it is problematic. And every time that you were mentioning it, I was like, well, no, I mean, actually, rape and murder is actually a serious, that's really a problem. But I was able to at least be like, well, Diana's only 23, so she has never done this, so that's good.
But on the social commentary side, that article again pointed out that it's really interesting, and she pointed out she doesn't think that Azzerello did this on purpose, but that it seems to be telling the side of the story that anti-feminists tell about feminists, that they're feminazis, that they hate men and want to kill them and they want to use them. And so you just took the only icon like that in the DC universe and you made them all like that. So it was almost this idea of asking a question of how could powerful women be anything but monsters?
Oh,
because they're the only representatives you have in the universe. It would be different if you had two different representatives and you said one of them was corrupt and one of them's good, and they're equal, just like men. But that's
so often the situation when you have a vacuum of commentary and you have one example. What you do with that example matters absolutely. If there were 50 well-known, well-developed, well-respected characters, female characters in the DCU, and Wonder Woman happened to have this revision, it wouldn't mean the same thing as it does now.
Right.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it comes down to I wish that DC and Marvel both, and Marvel's doing a good job at this, and DC maybe, I'm not as up to date with them, would hire some of these women who have great opinions and they're amazing writers to come in and join the fray. Stop hiring the same men over and over again to write stories about women.
So that in the writer's room, they can just be like, hey, can we maybe cut the rape scene?
Yeah.
Would that be all right?
If Kelly Thompson had been an author at the time, maybe she could have done Wonder Woman so much better.
Hire female writers to write any book other than Batgirl.
Yeah.
Which is the only book that I think reliably has female writers. I'm actually looking at a list right now of, this is depressing. I'm looking at a list of the Rebirth titles, and I see Hope Larson is writing Batgirl. Julie Benson is writing Batgirl and Birds of Prey. Everybody else is a guy.
Oh man!
And that's certainly not to be critical of Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti are writing Harley Quinn, so another kind of somewhat peripheral character. But everyone else is, all the other writers are guys.
Oh man!
I apologize if I've missed someone, and listeners to this podcast are looking at the list a little more closely than I am right now. That's not to in any way throw shade at DC. This is absolutely a problem across the aisle at Marvel too.
Right, absolutely. Well, and I mean, the other frustrating thing is that we know male writers who do female characters really well. I mean, all three of us are fans of Joss Whedon, and the man does women characters so well.
Yeah, and Brian K. Vaughan does an amazing job with female characters. I mean, one of his biggest works, Why the Last Man, only has one male character in it. The rest of the whole world is female. And he does a great job with it. And Saga. Saga is amazing as well.
Oh, I hear good things about Saga.
I've got to catch up. I only read the first volume of Saga so far, but that is an impressive piece of work and a very egalitarian piece of world building right off the bat. It's a problem that is constantly being revised and resolved in part, but we haven't yet reached the breaking point. There will be one. Someone is going to write the book that is going to be the breakout book. I mean, we had introductions of the new Ms. Marvel over Marvel, obviously.
Fantastic.
And we've got some, just so good. So we should actually do that. Sarah, have you read that?
I haven't. Do I need to?
Yes.
I need to? Okay, I'll pick some up today. Done.
All right.
Miss Marvel, right? Not Captain Marvel. They're different.
No, Miss Marvel, new character. But,
got it.
So good.
Okay, I'll pick it up.
So unconventional, but such a wonderful part of the Marvel universe now. So we are getting better, but you're right. While we remain in this fragile and somewhat precarious position, these kind of rewrites are going to be problematic. They are going to attract a lot of attention, and you can't always divorce the politics from the narrative. You can't always say, okay, but forget about all of that. Forget about the fact she's the female character in DC. This is just the story I want to tell. You don't necessarily have the freedom and the space necessary to do that, you know?
Yeah. And again, it is hard because that is that one little section is it in the first one or the second one?
I think it's in the second one.
Okay, in that second trade of Wonder Woman is the most problematic out of everything else because then we move away from that and we start following Wonder Woman as she's completing this grand mythic quest and meeting all of these characters from Greek mythology, and it's amazing, so much fun. The character designs are brilliant.
Yeah, the
like,
art and the character designs in this.
You guys have seen
really
Hades,
fun.
right?
Hades is
a
so
little
cool.
boy with like a candle crown that covers his face. It's
So
just,
good.
oh my
Such a
gosh,
good
it's
idea.
so
Which
cool.
is taken from mythology, I think, the imagery there. I think, because I've seen tarot cards with that imagery on it. And,
That's really
Oh,
interesting.
really?
but it's
Oh,
not
that was
quite the
new to
same.
me,
It's
yeah.
an interesting take on it, but I love that take on it. It's so cool looking.
It's so neat. And then just, oh man. And I don't want to spoil anything for you guys, but I mean, like, just the way that it all wraps up. And by the end, you're just like, well, that was phenomenal. I don't even, like, that was incredible.
Great individual panels and also great comic book storytelling. A great sense of movement and flow from panel to panel. Great pacing, too. There are some moments that are just so suspended. It's such a difficult thing to do well. And this, I think, is an excellent example. I'll be following up with Cliff Chang's work, I've got to say.
Oh, yeah.
He's not an artist I'd previously read a lot of, but
I really
he's real
appreciated
good.
the art. I appreciated that Wonder Woman looked tall and buff without, like, her breasts being ridiculous. And actually looking like basically a real person, which I really like, because I know that is a serious problem in comic books. But I thought that everybody was, you know, even when I'm not sure if you guys have seen Artemis yet, but like in this comic, in this story, you never see Artemis's face. Not Artemis, Aphrodite. You never see Aphrodite's face, the goddess of love and beauty. You only ever see like her shoulder or like her back or something like that, because she's supposed to be, you know, the goddess of love and beauty and all this stuff. And so I thought that was a really interesting and deliberate choice, that you never see what her face looks like, because I don't know, maybe it looks different to every single person who like lays eyes upon her or something like that.
Commentary.
But that was really cool. The way that Apollo and Artemis look, the way that they're, all of the character designs are just absolutely amazing. And I loved the art direction. I just fell in love immediately with Diana, and I was like, why have I wasted my life not being a fan of Wonder Woman? Like, what was I thinking? This is incredible.
But now you've got 60 years of comics to go back and
That's
read.
true. Yeah, now I have a lot, so that'll be really good.
There's a lot of those you should probably avoid, though.
That's what I hear also.
That's fair.
Yeah.
She is generally great in the animated stuff. I think DC does very well over on the animated side. I've been catching up with those over the course of the last couple of weeks, and there's just a lot to love.
Okay, man.
Does that take us to the end of the conversation?
I think so.
Just wrapping it up.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but no, I think that we covered it all. Good job. I'm so glad our internet worked this time. That made me really happy.
I know. Well, I switched offices with Lonnie. Now I'm here in the little office that we're using as our studio, so I'm hardwired into my modem and everything is
perfect.
working.
Good.
Things are still a little bare in here, but I'm working on
I love it. Okay, well, so we're going to do Miss Marvel next time. Should there be anything else? I like that we kind of cover like a range of topics.
I mean,
I don't know. Have you been reading anything?
Women in Marvel. I mean, there's plenty of good
I'm
stuff
all about
coming out
that.
of it.
I have so many things to say. Oh my gosh, wait, I bet that by the next time we do this, that Civil War will be out.
Yes, it will.
Civil War and Miss Marvel. That'll be
Civil
that's
War and
plenty to
Miss
talk
Marvel.
about.
Let's do it.
Marvel.
All right.
Miss Marvel.
Blah, blah, blah. Difficult talking.
Yeah, I think Lonnie and I right now are planning on buying back-to-back tickets for Civil War on opening day.
That
We're
is
just
a
gonna go see
brilliant
it
idea.
twice.
Oh my gosh,
amazing.
that's great. No, that is a good plan.
That's what I need to start doing, since I sugarcoat everything the first time. I need to see it twice immediately, so I can
Let's
have
do that.
opinions
Movie
coming out.
buddies, and we'll go do that thing.
Well, it's so exciting to see the early press on Civil War come out and be as positive as it is.
Oh,
It's-
yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Did you see the clip that they did at the MTV Movie Awards where you've got Falcon and Wanda and Cap are like breaking into one of the buildings or whatever, and
No.
it's so cool. But, oh, hang on, we have a 2-year-old invading. Nope, there he goes. He can open the door to this room, but he knows he's not supposed to be in here. So he's 3, he's not 2. One day I'll get that right. Anyway,
Give him a podcast.
we
Get him
probably
started.
should.
By the time
yeah.
you get that right, he'll be 4.
It's
so.
true. Yeah. The 3-year-old, not 4. But anyway, and they need to get Cap into the room, and so like he's walking forward, and he turns over to Wanda, and he goes, "Wanda, just like we practiced." And then like she like hexes him up through the window, and it's the coolest thing, and I'm so excited. I think that their relationship is going to be
I'm
just
watching that.
super awesome in this
the
movie.
second we hang up this call,
yeah.
I'm watching
Oh, it's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
The
think
Dusted listeners can wait an extra 5 minutes for me to edit the podcast. It'll be
That's
fine.
true. Yeah. Okay. Well, this was a blast.
It was.
It's been a pleasure. Let's
Yes.
do it again soon.
Absolutely. That sounds great. Thank you guys so much for listening. Listen to all of the other shows that everybody does. Alastair is over on Storywonk, and they do amazing, amazing work. We would not be podcasting if it was not for Storywonk, and I
I'm
hold
so
that to
sorry.
be truth. Yeah. No, I think it's it's working out for us. Thank you, Vinton. With your Hamilton podcast is doing really well.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah,
It
and you
is.
guys are doing Hamilton this week, which is really exciting.
Yes,
I
I'm
listened
so
to it for the
excited.
first time yesterday, which is a very exciting thing.
What did
I
you
sat
think?
down, I poured a glass of. God, it's so good.
Isn't it so good?
It's stupid good.
It's
Honestly,
really dumb how good it is.
I don't know what we're going to be able to say about it on Thursday. We're going to have to find something.
Yeah,
it may just be like a history. It may be like an oral history of the show. But we're going to send people over to the Hamilton podcast for much more insightful and decisive. And your comic book podcast is starting pretty soon, right?
Free comic book day is when we're hoping to launch. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Maybe we should get together after Free Comic Book Day and talk about our haul.
That sounds good.
yeah.
I've actually never done a free comic book day thing.
So every year I volunteer, he does pay me. I work down at the comic book store. He pays me in comics. And he has a 24-hour sale.
I need a job
so
like
from
that.
like,
Oh,
I think
great.
it's 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. and the sale changes every hour. It gets better and better until the last hour. And I try to stay as late as possible. Finally, I don't have a job where I have a job where I choose my own hours now. So I'm going to try to stay the whole 24 hours for once.
Oh, awesome.
That would be insane.
Yeah. I
That
usually
sounds great,
stay
though.
about 15 or 16, but I'm going to try for the whole 24.
That'll be awesome. Oh,
I take the kids down every year. There's a big comic book store downtown here in Syracuse. So I take them down there and we hang out. And there's usually this one guy who I don't even know who he is, but he does these little sketches that are just
that's
adorable.
cool.
So
Yep.
yeah,
we have
little
local
$5
artists.
sketches.
We set up a table at the shop, and 2 to 3 local artists will do sketches for free the whole day. People just line up.
Oh, wonderful.
That's
Sarah,
awesome.
you've got to do it this year.
Oh, maybe we'll see.
If you can find the time.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, my father is always teasing me. He's like, why am I not rich off of all of your talents? And I'm like, I want to be paid in love. I don't want money. I want to be paid in words of affirmation and hugs. And he's like, those don't pay the bills, you fool. He doesn't actually say that.
One of the
But
things I love so much about the shop that I work at is that they have people dress up all day long, and they set it up to where they can rotate out. But at any given time, there's 15 different superheroes walking around, dancing outside.
Oh,
and
awesome.
The owner makes costumes himself, so he made a group.
that's cool.
And this guy like walks on paint cans and is super tall and has like those claw arm things. So his arms are longer,
fantastic.
and it's amazing.
that's
Every
so
costume he
cool.
makes is fantastic. So I love doing photography out there when I go out there,
Right.
just taking pictures of it all.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Actually, I took a picture of Deadpool and Spider-Man holding each other, and it now has like 1,000 reblogs on Tumblr.
That's amazing.
Excellent.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to go look that one up too.
Oh man. Okay, well, yeah, I think that about covers it. Awesome. Thank you guys
right.
so much for joining us for this on Crisis on Infinite podcast, and we will see you next time we do it after Captain America: Civil War, and we will have opinions. I might just
That'll be
have
a long show.
shrieking vowel sounds probably for most of it. I feel like, yeah, I think that sounds accurate. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm Sarah Cade.
I'm Vinton Bayne.
And I'm Alastair Stephens.
This has been a Graphomania production in association with Common Room Radio and Storywonk. Thank you to Sarah Cade, who edited the episode you just heard. If you would like to hear more podcasts, go to storywonk.com, commonroomradio.com, or graphocast.com, graphocast.com.